Hi, I'm really sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm delighted to be joining you all today in this way. I unfortunately had to go to Mexico, which is a last-minute call towards working on my passion, my why. And this particular trip is focused on the vaquita, which is a porpoise that's on the brink of extinction and needed my storytelling abilities and attention. So I want to talk to you today about what my why is and how I came upon it. Most of us wake up and we don't feel called to things. We don't know what our reason for being here in this world is and in what capacity we need to participate. I think that happens in an organic way for some people, and for others it requires a lot of soul searching. For me, it was the perfect storm. It was born out of circumstances coming together in a manner that I could have never foreseen. I lost my father on August 29th in 2009. It was a huge blow, and I did not quite see it coming because, family tries to protect you and you don't often get the truth from them. So I was completely unprepared for what was to unfold for me. I had to take over a lot of things from my family and become sort of the pillar that they relied on. This completely changed the person I was. I had up until then been a rather carefree individual who wasn't really aware of her responsibilities or role and obligations to her relationships or the world. Child until then. And when you're adult, one of the first things you realize is that you have to assume responsibility. When I began working as my father and emulating my father's personality on a daily basis, I quickly came upon the fact that everyone was turning to me for answers. But I didn't have any answers for my own self because I hadn't spent any time asking questions that mattered to me to help me uncover who I was and what I was meant to do with my life. This came upon me when I was traveling. I took a short vacation, and this was in China. And I remember just walking through places and thinking to myself, is this what I want to do with my life? Do I want to grow up to be my dad? Or am I just going to, pretend to be my father and live his life instead of being who I am and come into my own? Coming into your own is something that you have to really work on. When I asked this question, the first thing that became apparent to me is that I did not want to do his work, which was to run a company that was in textiles and fashion. My career up until then had been in fashion, so it was rather synchronous that that's what was expected out of me. But just because you're good at something and you can do something does not mean that's what you should be doing. And it took a lot of courage and strength for me to say I quit that path, that easy route that was charted for me, that was expected of me, and to truly push myself toward what I felt called to. My calling was wildlife and wilderness, outdoors, and sustainable development, seeing a wild future for humanity. I knew my function in this world had to be service-oriented because that's what brought me joy. And I knew this and felt this. I didn't have to think it. Most of us wake up and we think our way through things. We don't give attention to how we feel. Feeling is what drives what it is you're meant to do with yourself. And for me, my emotions all orbited wildlife. And so I just made this command decision to quit my entire fashion career, jump into the deep end without knowing. It's sort of like being a bird that leaves a nest. You just have to believe that it's in your DNA to fly, because no one else is going to be able to tell you that you can, and you don't know you can until you do it. So you jump off this precipice not knowing what's going to come, and you somehow manage it. You somehow fly. You don't fall to the ground. It's the most miraculous thing that can happen to you because you actually show up for you and you believe in yourself. That's what I did. My why took shape because I quit what wasn't meant for me and what I didn't feel truly was in alignment with who I was, with my self-integrity. And I decided to stand up for that which mattered, which is my passion, my calling to wild. In answering this calling, I remember just feeling completely exhilarated. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a born-again person. Like I have this new lease on life that was finally going to be mine. However, I'll tell you this, right after you have that moment of incredible courage and insight comes the crippling fear and self-doubt. And it took me a year of crying myself to sleep and not knowing whether there was going to be any turnaround for me, whether I was going to make a substantive earning out of this, whether I was going to have a career in it. So I asked myself every night, if I should stick it out for one more day. And I couldn't help but stick it up for one more day because the next day would come upon me, and I would wake up and see what was transpiring in our world. And my responses were all oriented toward acting, toward being part of the dialogue instead of being a passive victim who's just taking what was coming her way. So when I woke up one day, I was like, wow, I'm finally paying rent. I don't know how that happened. And that's what happens if you just get through it and commit to the fact that you were chosen, and this sense of need to do something that matters beyond your own self and beyond your own personal joys. There's something greater than you. You step out of yourself for the first time, that level of expansive, inclusive awareness that you decide to channel through you. The minute you abide by that, your life opens up in numerous ways. And now fashion can still be a part of my life, but not in the limited sense that it was before. You become the filter through which all of these different ways of being engaged in the world around you can happen, as opposed to them being the filter that you are pouring yourself through. So I think I believe the why, those two aspects come together when you stand by your internal alignment. You have to ask yourself, are you truly feeling in sync? Do you feel, think, know, all of it in the same alignment? And that doesn't happen for most people. We're often in conflict. We go back and forth on a timeline. We question our choices and we doubt how we feel, because what we think is oriented towards security and stability. So we want to go toward that which we know and have known, as opposed to that which is taking us away from what has been familiar towards the unknown. And the unknown is where exploration and discovery truly happens. In quitting fashion and pursuing this path that was about creativity and storytelling for conservation issues, for the voices that have been eclipsed in our world around us, and helping prevent loss from happening. That's the other undercurrent of my entire existence, is to address loss and look at the loss in our world so that we can switch from this dynamic of loss towards love, which is far more empowering and inclusive and enabling of systems, communities, dynamics that exist in our world. And for me, I think when all of these things began to fit together, I began to see that it was not just about me, that I was waking up for all these other individuals, for both human and wild, for something that was all-encompassing, that took account of the whole planet and my role in it, and that I was actually holding myself accountable to that whole, which makes you feel like the most unbound being ever. Because until then, you're just this person, you end where your body is. But once you take on something much greater than the self, you truly do feel as big as the whole world. And I would tell you this, if you want to ask yourself or encourage yourself or inspire yourself, start here, start now, because it's never too late. People think that time has passed, that it's too late for them, that they can't have a second lease on life, but you always can. The minute you ask yourself the right questions, you'll come upon the answers that matter. And you will realize that it's harder to not step up for you than to step up for you. Because to honor you is what you were born to do. You're here to abide and enable and empower you. And no one else can do that for you. You can listen to all the inspiring talks out there and expect formulas of success to be fed to you. But passion, purpose, person, and presence cannot happen unless you ask why. And the why has to find a deep resolution from within you. So I highly encourage everyone who's here today to look at the why in a manner that is helping them not just think about themselves in a self-indulgent, selfish way, but to truly account for others, to account for the loved ones in your life, to account for your family, and keep moving outward. See that sphere of influence that you hold and see how far you can expand that to truly make you feel connected instead of isolated from the world around you. Thank you.